Good evening. How is everybody?
Doing a lot better than last week.
Well, good. You back among the living?
Yeah, I am a little bit.
Do you have jet lag or?
Jet lag and COVID.
Oh.
I guess I got it on my way back from Japan.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in an confined space, that's not to try to do one-upmanship. I was in January of 2019, the year before COVID. I was in a small room with a lady who had just gotten off of a, I don't know, how many hour flight is it from China? And she gave me COVID. So I got it straight from China the year before everybody else had it. Problem was they didn't know what it was. And but anyway, I survived it. You don't need but one lung anyway, so I do pretty good. So yeah, it was
Two is a convenience.
It is an inconvenience, though. It is an inconvenience. So, but that's all right. And so I was very careful not to get it again during the pandemic because it's about the least amount of fun you can have. And so, biggest thing is the weight you put on when they give you up. They didn't have the right stuff. They just gave you steroids. And as big as I am, can you imagine giving me steroids? But I took the weight back off, so I'm okay. Well, it was hard though. That was the biggest thing for me, was getting the weight back off from the steroids. That's at my age, it ain't easy. It's not easy. And reaching down and turning the wheel on the front of the scale don't help a bit. It certainly does. All right. So this is the next to the last go round. I can't believe the time's gone this fast. It's been good though. Y'all have been great. If I don't tell you that often enough, that's my fault, because y'all have been great. So let's see who our stars of the week is. RJ's already turned in his cap. He's already done. So he's going to coast right into summer. So he's the star of the week on our evidence work. And we'll talk about competency folio just in a minute. I have several stars of the week on that. RJ also summarized case study 4. I thought this was pretty good, and this is good advice overall. But principals are judged on the actions of their teachers. Let's think about that one for a minute. Goes back, kind of circles back to our first case study when the lady went rogue and tried to, put Bobby under the jail. But we are judged by what our teachers do or don't do in the court of public opinion, sometimes in court of law, sometimes in civil court, sometimes in criminal court. We mentioned things like teachers don't wear their IDs or they prop the door open, but also their attitudes and behaviors, we're judged on those. And you have to be willing to have those critical conversations with your faculty about the expectations of your school and of your school district. You have to be able to have those, what Ron Thompson used to call come to Jesus meetings, that you know if your teachers do crazy things that you'll be tarred with that same brush. That's a good point to remember. And that you need to remind them of that we have certain behavior expectations, that you will support them, but not if they're not doing the right thing, propping doors open or not wearing their badges or, not doing the right thing with kids. But we're judged on what they do or don't do. That's a good thing to remember. And so what should we be doing? We should be out knowing what they're doing. How can you be principal of the school if you don't know what's going on in the classrooms? How can you be the instructional leader? Danya pointed out that principal wasn't the instructional leader. And I think Larry was the one that made the point. Let me find it here. Yeah. Now, Larry got all deep and philosophical on us this week. But wow. He put 2 and 2 together and came up with 4, not 22 like I usually do. But he made such an insightful comment on this. How can the principal who doesn't get in the room grow the instructional capacity of teachers for them to then grow the instructional capacity of their students, which is the whole point of school administration? We don't work directly with kids. We work with teachers for the betterment of kids. You have to understand that. I told you one of the landmine questions they'll ask you during the interview process, or they used to during the Gallup receiver interviews, is, I'll just call on somebody. I'll call on Kristen at random. Kristen, if it paid exactly the same, would you prefer to work with students or teachers? If it paid exactly the same.
Students.
Well, say they'll let you stay working with students, because to move into administration, you understand you're no longer going to be working directly with students. You're going to be working with adults for the betterment of students. And so that gets back to that whole notion. Are you going to be a champion for the adults or a champion for students? You're going to be a champion for students. That means that you are going to enforce the rules and you are going to grow the adults into the ones that students need. How do we expect to grow them into the ones we need? Because we're not getting the ones we need. We have to grow them into that if we don't get in their rooms. If we don't know what they're doing, then we can't grow them. And if we can't grow them, we can't grow kids. Isn't everything now predicated on growing kids? Growth model, MTSS, everything is now growing kids. Well, what we have to know, we can't go out and say in public, is we got to grow our teachers first, because they're not capable of growing kids, many of them, in the shape that we get them in to start with. And y'all know I'm telling you the truth. I told you that's where that whole Collins Good to Great model, that's a organizational book. Get the best teachers and get them on the bus and then get them in the right seats. What if there ain't any best teachers? What if there aren't any? What if they're just warm bodies? You got to make them teachers. I don't believe you'll do that just sending them down to the room and telling them good luck to you, give them the hail and hearty slap on the back and say good luck to you. But as Larry pointed out, if you can't grow the instructional capacity of teachers, you can't grow the instructional capacity of students. That's exactly right. We make our impact through teachers to children. And that guides the decisions that we make. And sometimes we have to be hard on them and we have to hold them accountable, because if we don't, then the right things won't happen in those rooms. So that's a good catch by Larry. I like that. Anybody want to comment on that?
I was going to say, I just found that in my CAP and the teacher working conditions survey. 92%, Tommy, you're not muted. 92% of our teachers thought that our leadership did great with facilitating student learning through data, but only 62% of them thought that they were being supported by the leadership.
Right.
So that's that division where they're doing good for the students, but they don't know how to lead, how to get the teachers to be led with professional development or whatever.
Teacher leaders. I was on a Zoom this afternoon from DPI. I told you I'm part of the Principal Standards Commission, and we're doing some review of principal standards and preparation programs. And today was a Zoom with DPI, and one of my colleagues who's at North Carolina Central, she was arguing her point, and I guess I was arguing mine. And she used to be a teacher for me, by the way, a long time ago. And so I thought, well, what a terrible job I did training her when she was a teacher. But her argument was, thinking back to our app cell, we're still talking about our case study, thinking back to our app cell, first thing we had you do was get email permission from your principal to form your own PLC, right? And how to set up and run and research and understand the PLC. Well, her argument today was that wasn't important, that we should just let them, join in that in one of their teacher leadership classes, they just let them join in the PLC and then take a leadership role. And I thought that's good for teacher leadership. But for school leadership, you need to know how to put effective teams together and evaluate those teams. That's the important part of that whole deal about PLCs is what decisions you made and the rationale, the theoretical framework from Do4 as to how to set up teams to be successful. If you don't know how to set teacher teams up to be successful, you won't be. It won't happen just by luck. And I thought, boy, I tell you, I wish I'd done a better job when she was a teacher training her what it takes. Teacher leadership is wonderful. It's absolutely, to Tanya's point, it's absolutely wonderful, but you got to lead them. Teacher leadership does not take the place. It cannot replace administrative leadership. It can't. That's the juxtaposition of the two numbers that Tanya just gave you. Teachers do fine, but if administrators don't know how to support that, we don't get the growth that we need. Yeah, we can have a building full of teacher leaders that are doing great things, but if we're not facilitating them, if we don't know how, if we don't need to know how to put effective teams together that can data dive and come up with solutions to problems in the classroom and address the deficiencies we have, if we can't manage or lead that, then we're missing a big part of what it is to be an instructional leader. Instructional leader doesn't mean that you go in and sit and script lessons all day, or that you sit and do the job of an instructional facilitator. An instructional leader puts together effective teams and monitors those teams. An instructional leader puts together a good master schedule to maximize the resources that they have, along with the budget, and understanding that budget's got to support that instructional program. That's what an instructional leader does from the administrative side. It's a different thing than being an instructional leader as a classroom teacher or as a curriculum instruction facilitator or specialist or whatever. We're not so much in the room to tell them, give them little tips on teaching and that. We're trying to set the whole thing up where we give the people opportunity to be successful. It's a different deal for us. Instructional leadership is not the same for school administrators as it is for curriculum instruction specialists. It's a completely different take on the problem. We don't have time to go sit in teachers' room and sit and script lessons and tell them every little thing they got to fix in their lesson. That's what we have facilitators and curriculum people for. We're there to provide the structure for them to be successful, the PLCs, the master schedule, the budget, the professional growth plan, getting them the professional development they need. That's our job. That's what we do as instructional leaders. It's a different take than being a classroom leader. So that's my take on that one. Tremaine said something pretty insightful. Diversity is inevitable. We can either deal with it or, it can't be like all the far right screaming and yelling. If you don't say racism, it'll go away or there won't be any. If we don't say diversity, there isn't any. No. And diversity isn't about race. Diversity is a lot of different things. And we need to understand that. Liz talked about reminding teachers of their contract when it comes to supervision for safety of students. I thought this was a good catch by Liz. Teachers complain about, why have I got to stay till after the buses leave, even if they have the second route, and it might be 30 minutes after my scheduled time. Teachers are not hourly employees. Teachers are contract employees. Do not let them go home at 3:30 just because they say that that's supposed to be their time. If you don't get the last bus out till 4 o'clock, then teachers need to be there till 4 o'clock. Remember that 1 to 40 safety ratio that we have to have so that we don't get hit with we don't lose a negligence lawsuit in court because we didn't have adequate supervision. Well, teachers get to go. Where does it say teachers get to go home at 3:30? It says today is 8:30 to 3:30. It doesn't say they get to go home. If you got people still on your campus, you need to have people there supervising because their contract says, and any other duties assigned by the principal. I know that everybody is now screaming work-life balance. I get it. There was a candidate in for a job at Gardner Webb yesterday. She's been all the way up through a superintendent. And I was telling her, I said, there was no such thing as work-life balance when I came along for school administration. And now that's the thing. But teachers screaming and yelling, work-life balance. I'm leaving as soon as I can. No, you're not. If we got kids in the building, no, you're not. And if you have to fire somebody and cover their class themselves, you can't do that. You're going to end up in jail. All these folks that are now protesting, I'm not showing up before, and I'm not working over. It's not overtime. They're not hourly employees. You better have people there to supervise kids when they're on your campus, period. I get it that people are all up in this work-life balance now. Okay, that's not of my generation, but there's a lot of things that aren't. That's okay. But the law is the law on supervision, folks. I would hate to have to go to court and answer to a judge when they ask me why I didn't have enough people there to supervise these kids, and one of them got run over about the second, on the second load, we used to call it. Well, teachers said they wanted to work-life balance, and they went home at 3:30. I don't believe that would go well for you in court. That one might be criminal. You might end up in jail over that. So we need to remember, and any other duties assigned by the principal. Now, I wouldn't be doing regular, academic things or after time, but for safety, I make sure that if we need to have people before school and after, then we need to have them before and after. Let me share my screen and show you the stars of the week. Our competency folio: Tanya, Danya, Amy, Alicia, Jeffrey, Kristen, Letitia, Tremaine, Randy, Megan. Doing an excellent job on your competency folios. And so make sure you get them in there and get your artifacts in. Some of you, most of you, we've only got 4, I think 3 now that haven't completed the CAP, and all of them are in task 4 or putting them together. So we only have like 3 of our group not having both the OMA and SKIP done. So everybody will finish both of those. Many of you have started on the CAPs. Randy's finished his already. I'm telling you, as much as y'all hate me now, you'll love me about the 8th week of summer school. When you realize you got a SIP to put together, finish up your competency, you got a standards project, all that stuff that you've got, and you can't get data for your CAP because everybody's gone home, or as Dr. Patterson and I were talking about yesterday, schools put a moratorium on survey and interviews once review for EOG starts or EOCs, and you can't get your data to do your CAP, and you're going to be hoping to get somebody maybe later on in the summer, and then what happens again. I'll reiterate, the gong sounds on July 1. Let's just back it up here. July 1, everybody goes home, even the principal. You won't see anybody probably until August. They get the first week of July off for 4th of July, and they always back their vacation. And usually they get 2 weeks. So that's already 4th week of July before they come back. And most of the time you won't catch them that week because they'll hide in their office and catch up on all their paperwork and emails. And so they don't normally emerge until about August 1st. The 10-month people go home on June 15th. And even the 11-month APs are done at the end of June. They won't be back. So if you don't get this stuff, if you don't get those interviews and surveys done on CAP 1 and 2 before testing starts, it's not going to go well for you. But if you got at least those 2 knocked out, between now and May 15th, you got about a month. If you can get those knocked out, knock out that CAP. You can keep on working, put stuff in my shell. I grade every day, but because class stop doesn't mean we do. You knock those things out. If you can walk into summer school caught up on your competency folio with 2 rounds in there and with the CAP done, then your summer will be rather enjoyable. If not, it's going to be, your tail's going to be on fire. I'll just tell you right now, it will not be a fun summer. That's, the summer goes so fast. And remember, 2 weeks before the end is when everything is due, because y'all are at the end. I have to tell them that you're completing. So you get 8 weeks to have it all done. And it is a bear. And so y'all are well on your way, and I'm very proud of it. All right, let's talk about school finance for a little bit. Now I've got a couple of PowerPoints tonight. You know me, I don't like reading PowerPoints, but let me share my screen. I just want to show you the first one. Now, if you're interested in district, some of you have district level jobs, and I know that. And this is the PowerPoint for you. Now, I teach this one into doctoral level. This is a doctoral level one because this one is for the school district budget. And you see, it's much more setting the vision, creating an infrastructure, setting standards, advocating. This is how to put together a budget and all the business administration side of school budgets for a district. If you're interested in that, this is a good one. It's kind of generic, but it's a good one if you're interested in that. Just remember, the reason why this one is so political is that school boards in North and South Carolina are unempowered. Again, what does unempowered mean for a school board? Can they levy taxes? No. Well, how do they fund their budget? If the school board develops a budget for the school district, public school, and they can't levy taxes, where does the money come from to fund their budget?
State budget and local.
Anybody know?
State and federal.
The local budget. That's right, state and federal. That's two of the 4 streams, state and federal. But their local budget, we got state, federal, local, and then school. We know how we get school, we fundraise. We'll talk about that when we do school budgets in just a minute. But where does state funding, where does local funding, the county that the school district resides in, where does that local funding come from if the school board can't levy taxes? And they can't in North or South Carolina.
The county commissioners.
County commissioners. So, what difference does that make? Makes all the difference in the world. Budgeting at the district level is a political process, not a financial one. Because you got to go hat in hand and ask somebody else to give you money. So, what's happened to you? Oh, there it is. All right. So therein lies our issue. So budgeting at the district level has a lot more variables in it than at the school level. The school level budget. But how we obtain that money from the county commissioners is a whole course in itself. And that's why, so these are the kinds of questions that you have to answer for that. What are the nature and cost of each feasible alternative given the educational need? Most effective means to provide an alternative, cost effectiveness. This is the kind of stuff that county commissioners want to know. That they don't know RTI from MTSS, from PBIS to, to double data. They don't know any of that stuff. This is the kind of things that you have to be able to speak to for them. So if you want to know about district budgeting, which is about school business administration, how to get money out of county commissioners, this is the one for you. This is the one that we're most interested in tonight, school-based budgets. Again, I'm not going to go through all the slides. I'm going to hit the highlights that we talked about. This is a review from what we've talked about all semester. All right. What are the 4 streams? Federal, state, local, from the county commissioners through the school board, and then local school money. All right, so federal. Let's talk about federal for a minute. Federal money comes in different ways. We talked about this last week. Categorical means you have to spend it. Let's say you get $40,000. They tell you how to spend every thousand of it. That's how most federal money comes for the traditional programs like Title I, Exceptional Children, 504, AIG, CTE, and English as second language. Those come categorical. This much for teachers, this much. Just like Title I will even tell you how much you can spend on your parent night. It comes categorical as opposed to a block grant. What is a block grant? Get $40,000, spend it any way you want to. General federal aid, we just had a big bunch of that's running out. What is that? What did we just get that was just general federal aid?
ESSER funds.
ESSER funds. Yay! Y'all have been, I love working with smart people. That's what general federal aid is. Different times, different things going on in society. They'll send money from time to time. When the economy crashed back in 7 and 8, they sent money back then. 2007, 8, and 9, they sent money during that. They sent money because of the pandemic. There's been a number of times in my lifetime that they have sent money. Now, you say, well, Dale, what's the rules on that money? You don't know till you get it because it's general. Now, when it comes, it'll have rules attached to it. Sometimes it'll be categorical. Sometimes it'll be block. Sometimes it'll be a combination of the two. Now, those of you who know anything about ESSER money, look, we'll stop. Remind me, flow through money. Anybody want to tell any ESSER stories? Anybody know how it came to your school or your district, or stories about ESSER money?
We're losing a ton of positions from.
There you go.
About 900, I think 700 positions that are being dissolved.
Yep. So, not to throw CMS under the bus, but they took all the categorical for staff and spent all that, and they took all the block and bought staff too. Now, everybody didn't do that. So some districts aren't losing many people, but CMS made the decision internally to spend all of their ESSER money on positions. Can you imagine what that's going to do to schools this fall with all these positions gone now?
So did Forsyth.
Yeah. Yes, they did. They spent all theirs on people too. I won't say that they weren't thinking about life after COVID, but they weren't thinking about life after COVID, that money wouldn't be here forever. The last thing I would do if I could help it. Now, as I said, some of the money came, you had to hire. You had to hire positions. But the last thing that I would want to do is hire positions with block grant money that I knew I couldn't continue to fund, because we set a standard in our building, and then we have to maintain that standard with less people. And one of the biggest fallacies in organizations is that we can do more with less. Nope, we can do less with less. We can't do more with less. That's nonsensical. Now, people can, but if we can maintain with less, the problem is that we burn ourselves up. We circle back to that work-life balance deal. Well, we were doing this much last year. Well, we had 80 people. We got 75 now. Well, we want to do the same with 75 as we did with 80. Well, that means that we're going to have to pick up collectively the work of 5 people. And then all of a sudden we start burning our people up. Yes, I want to do everything we can for our people every day, but it's kind of like one of the pundits. He's not my favorite. He's not my least favorite. But the part that he missed about COVID is he screams about all the time now is the idiocy of closing schools. Kids don't get it or it don't hurt them. We didn't close schools to keep kids safe. We closed them so all of our teachers wouldn't die. Idiots. That was the whole notion, was we don't want our teachers to die. If we don't have teachers, we can't get anything done. That's what, we close schools to try to protect teachers. And now we're just going to grind them up. We're going to expect 75 to do what 80 did, or 75 to do what 90 did. And we're just going to grind our teachers up. We keep grinding them up and running them off. We're not going to have anybody to work with our children. You can't do more with less. The input has to be there. That means that the people you got have got to do more. But yes, a lot of people made the decision because it's blocked and we can do whatever. We'll turn it categorical and we'll buy teachers with it and we'll buy other people. And now they're going to pay the price for that. I hate that too.
Dr. Lamb, I know there's been a huge conversation because we had an ESSER interview career fair like 2 weeks ago where the people who were hired with the ESSER funds are not qualified for the positions that schools have posted.
Yes. Yes. So now that's the other little dirty side of why I wouldn't hire people. And I was going to try to be polite, but I'll just come out and say it. We hired people because we could, and we hired people that weren't very good because we had the money. We were lighting our cigars with $100 bills. We were just flush with cash, and we made some bad decisions. And now we come back to reality. We realize these people aren't qualified for the positions that we had. What's the probability that they were qualified for the positions we paid them for this past 3 years? None. We just wasted that money.
So that money came during the first year of COVID.
It most certainly did. It started in 2020, early.
And I have my own opinions about how CMS handled it, but
terribly.
That's just
terribly.
When you have someone that's not qualified to fit the position, the mismanagement of money and mismanagement of leadership.
That's exactly right. Just because you had all this money to hire people, you didn't just need to throw out all the requirements and just get whoever if they weren't there, you shouldn't have wasted the money on. That's what I'm talking about. That has to factor into this too. When all of a sudden you get all this money and you say, I'm gonna hire these people. Are they there to be hired? Back to Collins. We'll get the best ones. What if there are any best ones? Well, there weren't, in some places there weren't any, but we just hired random people as if that was going to be any help. We just wasted that money. We just absolutely wasted it. And we didn't set ourselves up for success down the road by hiring good people and working on training them. We just gave them the money. And then now we say, oops, they're not qualified now that we're spending our money. We're not going to spend, but now they were fine when we were spending somebody else's money. They weren't fine then either. This is the kind of stuff that erodes public confidence in us, and it ought to. That we do dumbass things like this, we ought to have to own it. We hired people that weren't qualified for the jobs that we hired them for, knowing they weren't. That's not a plan. That's hope. It's never going to work out. It's never going to work out. But because the money came blocked from the feds, it's rife for abuse. It came blocked. Well, it came blocked and categorical, but mostly it came blocked. Those special federal funds. The other money on the federal is pass-through money. And that one, we have to be careful to understand how that works, because we really can get in trouble on this. Flow-through money means the feds want to have something and they want you to do the paperwork, the office work on it, making sure they come to work, keeping a time card, getting them paid, that kind of stuff. So they will pay you an administrative fee, but it's flow through. It's just going to flow through. It's not going to reside with you. It's not going to become part of your budget. Let's say the old CETA program in the summertime. That was a student program where the kids went to school in the morning and then worked jobs in the afternoon, clean up, paint, custodial, that kind of stuff. That came through that came through the federal government through what is now CTE. So what they would do is they would pay somebody locally to do that. And so you had to hire them and get them paid, and the money flowed through, and you got to take, I think back then you got about 5 to 7% of it for the administration of it. But basically it's a federal program that you are doing the financial piece for them. Like, because it's usually something to do with hourly work, and somebody has to keep up with their time cards. And they can't send some federal government person out just to check their time cards every week and make sure they're coming in. So they'll hire a local person to do that, that works for the school district as an independent contractor for the summer, that, you know, that runs that CETA program and keeps the time cards and gets them their check. And they pay the district, the school, or the school finance office, or the school district finance office to keep up with the time cards and get the time and get the paychecks out. That is flow through money. That one's a little bit different. And it's not a school program. Again, it's a federal program that's just being housed at your school. It's not a part of your budget. And that's what flow through money is. I know that different school districts have different summer experiences, some of them camping, some of them this one like this. Charlotte Mecklenburg back in the day, it was called the Summer C program. And it was the same thing. That was the CETA program there. But basically this is federal programs that are not housed, that you are just allowing them to house them at your school, and they're paying you an administrative fee. They're not a part of the school or school district. Is that a good enough explanation? Those of you old enough, you remember CETA or Summer C or some of those. There's still some of those things, those summer programs around too as well. And there's some after school type programs around too, where they hire. I had one of those when I was in Morganton. We had an after school program that was one of those that the feds paid for. I hired young ladies from the child development classes over at Western Piedmont there in Morganton to run it. But it wasn't in my budget. You know, it wasn't a school program, but I hired it and administrated it, and they paid the district a fee for, you know, to do that. I did that. I didn't get paid anything extra to do that, but it was great for the parents in our community to have that after school program where we could keep their kids so they got off work and come and get them. We kept them till 6. Most of them got off work at 5 at one of the plants locally, and they could get there and pick them up. So that you will mostly it's summer program and after school. Those are flow through. All right, let's talk about, I'm watching our time here. Let's talk about state. So the state income, our per pupil comes from sales tax, income tax, foundations. So the foundations, you know what those are. There's one here in the county I'm in, the McNair Foundation, that was set up. Robert McNair, who owned the Houston Texans, he was a Rutherford County native, graduated from East Rutherford High School. And so he had a foundation. But anyway, income tax, sale tax, property tax, that's what funds state. So as you could figure out, every time the state does one of these economic incentive packages for a company, and they don't have to pay their sales, you know, any income tax on their income. That comes straight from schools. You say, well, you know, property taxes, sales tax. Part of the problem in rural counties is sales tax. If there's not a lot of retail, I told the story last night. This is, you know, you could understand that. The county that I'm in tonight, there is nowhere that I could go to a retail store and buy a suit big enough to fit me. There's not one. There's only about 2 places. Unless I'm mistaken, there's only one store in the whole county where I could go and buy a suit, and they don't have one big enough to fit me. So how much, in a county that poor and rural, how much sales tax do they have? Other than the people driving through. Now they bypass the bypass where people don't, they don't even stop at the fast food now because they bypass the bypass. So 74 got bypassed years and years ago, back in the 70s, 60s, and they built all the fast food along the bypass. Well, then they came in and one exit further back and bypassed the bypass. So now you don't even have to, when you come into Rutherford County, you don't even have to, you don't even go through any of the county. You just go straight shot through and you're in Polk County up to Columbus to the fast food up there. There's no fast food along the road there where the mall is. They bypassed the mall and all the fast food. There's one exit with a fast food on it there at Broadway. The rest of them, you just shoot right by them now. Not much retail, clothing, any big ticket items, furniture stores, there's just not much of that here. So you don't generate a lot of sales tax here. And we talked about, well, if it doesn't matter if this is a statewide deal, but remember, we give everybody the same amount of money, whether they're in a rich place or a poor place. And so that property tax goes into our local. The next one, of course, is our local budget. If we don't have property or business tax, or we've given economic incentives, I told you they tore down the J.C. Cowan plant, or the Burlington plant, Burlington Industries, J.C. Cowan plant out on the bypass, right before where they bypassed the bypass on the bypass 74. They tore it down because it was there on the Second Broad River and could generate its own power, and put a server farm for Facebook there. The county spent $20 million in economic incentives, buying it, tearing it down, and upgrading it for them to come in and put their facility. The state gave them some ridiculous amount as well. That $100 million they gave Facebook came directly from schools, either local or state, from the money that we would get. So those economic incentives killed the school. And you say, well, we got jobs. They got 15 minimum wage jobs at the server farm, like custodial, maintenance, and security. If you remember back to the TV show 2.5 Men, when Eldridge and Jake got a job at Walden Server Farm, that's what we have here. We have a Facebook server farm. There are no employees, but we gave them $100 million between state and local. Just made the rich, a billionaire, get more billions. Kill the school system. Also on the local, what kills you on the local, as you all know, and this is part of the local money. Again, school boards are unempowered. They can't just tax people to get the money they need. They have to go to the county commissioners. Problem with that is county commissioners have to fund city, county government and all their facilities and all the capital needs of the school system and all the capital needs of the community college system. Part of our racial shame of our past is, I told you, in 1966 in North Carolina, we got out of building public schools as a state. We said this is now the local school district's problem because we don't agree with integration. 1954, Brown versus Board of Education said separate's not equal. We'll integrate schools. Nothing happened for 11 years until the Civil Rights Act, and took another year and federal troops to start integrating schools in 1966. I was in school then. I remember it well. And so the response of the people who were in state government in North Carolina is we don't want to integrate schools. And so in order to cause that problem, to slow that down, we'll stop building public schools. It'll be the local district's responsibility to build them now. Now, if that had been the end of it, it would have been bad enough. But what was even worse is the people who ran the state, I've told this story before, were the construction people, Spangler and Charlotte and Powell and Raleigh, and they said, we're going to keep on building schools, but we're going to build community colleges. And they built one on every corner in North Carolina. You can't cuss a cat for running into a community college building. Mecklenburg County alone has 5 Central Piedmont campuses. There's 58 community and technical colleges, and every county that don't have one has a satellite for the one next door. And some counties have multiples. They don't have enough students to have a marble shoot. They're in dire straits over at the community colleges. They don't have any students, but they have to keep all those old. And the problem is all the buildings are, the youngest of the buildings is what, 52 or 53 years old, and the oldest one's like 63 this year. They're all old, outdated, unusable, no technology, got asbestos in them. They're just like white elephants all over the state. And if you got one of those in your county commissioner has to keep it up along with the school system and city county government and all their facilities, landfills, convenience centers, the jail, the town hall, all that stuff's got to come out of the county commissioner's budget. And every time you do economic incentives to bring jobs to your county, you've taken it straight out of the public schools budget. But you've got to know that. But that's your other stream. Back to the state money, it doesn't come all at one time. It comes in tenths. You get $800 10 times minus your absenteeism. And that again speaks to this notion that if a kid goes to charter school, they get all this money. No, they just get it for that month. But you get paid, but you only get paid for the ones that show up. Local money, the majority of it has to go to keep up the physical plant of the county, the capital needs, which is buildings, grounds, and technology. And there's not a lot left, especially in the poor places, to add to the actual instruction of children. And then, of course, finally is your school funds. That's the other budget area, and some of the tricks of the trade to remember about that. Fundraising, we've talked about that ad nauseum. Make sure it fits what don't let parents handle money. Don't let teachers handle money if you can help it. Never let parents handle money. Account for it, do all those things. Booster clubs, I told the story last night. It's a true story. I went to junior high in Charlotte 2 years. They'd already planned that 2 years down the road, it was going to become a middle school. Previous principal, for whatever idiotic reason, allowed the booster club to buy all new uniforms, change the color and the mascot. Now, we're still going to be a junior high for 2 more years now, but go ahead and buy all new uniforms and change the mascot in preparation for changing to a middle school 2 years later down the road. Went to Bocock Stroud and spent $40,000 on new uniforms. Booster club did. They showed up and I said, I didn't buy any uniforms. I just got there as principal. Well, the booster club doesn't work here, but we had to pay it. You got to keep them under your thumb. Don't let them, I took their checkbook away from them then. You're done. I'll pay this off, but you will never write another check. And so I had to find $40,000 to pay off their debt at Bocock Stroud sporting goods for new uniforms. So you got to keep you can let PTA work on the fundraising, but you better not understand. You better stand. You can delegate the work and the activity, but not the responsibility. You're responsible. Don't let them handle money. Don't let them do crazy things that run up debt or steal the money or whatever. And your internal groups, your booster groups for your internal clubs, do the same thing for them. Let me skip to the top of the line. Grants, you got to be careful in grants on the in-kind, IN space KIND. What that means is we'll give you this much, but you got to match it by giving us that much back in kind. Now, sometimes it's a 1-to-1 match. Sometimes it's, a 2-to-1. They'll do 50, you do 25, something like that. But you got to be careful of the in-kind and grants. That's why everybody likes federal grants, because they generally don't have an in-kind component. And federal grants will let you take an administrative fee. Your district likes those as well. They get to take up to 15% of them to administer, whether they do anything or not. So they like those federal grants, but those in-kind grants that usually come from state sources or private, they don't like them, because it means they got to spend money too, or you got to spend money. So you got to be careful on grants. Foundations, we talked about those already. You have foundations of different kinds. Sometimes they're at the building level, sometimes they're state foundations, sometimes they're federal. The Anderson Foundation is a conservative federal group. But the deal is their in-kind part, if you take money from them, is you can't take money from the federal government. It supplants federal funds. Gardner Webb did that for a long time until about 5 years ago when the federal money was more than the Anderson grant money. And so we got out of that foundation. Partnerships, got to be careful on partnerships because sometimes you make other businesses in your community mad. Now, if it's an educational foundation of some sort, that's more foundation. But partnerships usually mean some kind of private or organization. You got to be careful about that. Now, you can, for those of you in some of the bigger cities, I'm speaking most specifically about Raleigh, Winston, and Charlotte that might have major or minor league sports teams. You can do partnerships with them. But if you're out in rural areas, not so much. But again, I partnered with the Panthers when I was a junior high principal, and they were just coming to town, and they were willing to do that. They didn't really provide us anything of monetary value. It was more they would send speakers over just to talk to the kids, which had some value, but not monetarily in your budget. Now, later on, I extended that partnership with them when I was a high school principal. And I didn't get any money out of them then, but you could say it was money. And so I've got the picture. I got to remember to bring my picture of me and my wife, she who must be obeyed. If you know what book that's from, then you're well read. That's from Rupold at the Bailey. So I've got a picture of me and her, and people say, where was that picture taken? It was taken at what was at that time known as first year of Erickson Stadium, which is now Panthers, Bank of America, or whatever. They let us have our prom for free at the stadium. Because we were partnered with the Panthers. Now, they didn't send me any money, but can you imagine how much money I saved on prom by getting a free venue, and they paid for all the security? Wow. About $25,000. Saved about $25,000. Now, that they didn't give me 25, but that was that was what it saved me. So that was a big chunk. That was very nice. We did it in the club area. There, what would be the 300 seats. Those club areas are pretty big, and they had the doors open. The kids could go out and see the stadium, and they'd light it up for us, and we could be on the side where we saw the lights from the high-rise buildings in Charlotte's on the other side. It was a beautiful venue. They paid for all the security, let us use it. It was great. We did that. We did that every year that I was there. We did it at Panther Stadium. It's great. Those kind of partnerships are wonderful. But again, if you're in Rutherford County, what are they going to do? You're going to go down to Gerator to the skating rink? I don't think that's going to go well for you down at the skating rink. That's the only entertainment venue left in the county is one skating rink left. You don't have that. And so again, that's that economic disparity between the wealthy and the poor. That is the history of public education in this state. So we haven't gotten into spreadsheets and accounting because they're different in every county. I'm not going to get into the 5 most important functions of budgeting. Suffice it to say, in my opinion, what's important about having particular steps in budgeting is that you have them, is that you have a process. Remember when we did the OMA, we talked about the budgeting process. How do you go about putting this together? Now, one of the things that I do want to point out, there's a difference in budgeting and accounting. Now, when you go and talk to the bookkeeper, that's accounting. That's how you spent the money. You know, that's what you spend it on, and you know, tracking the money you spent. Budgeting is how you're going to spend your money and setting the priorities on what the money is spent for. Let me say that again. Budgeting is setting priorities. That's leadership. You and the school improvement team. Supporting the initiatives from that school improvement plan. Those gap areas that we identified in the APSEL. We got to work on this. Let's put our master schedule toward it and our budget in the top of that pyramid. We're going to support that school improvement plan. That's budgeting. It's a plan. Accounting is on the other end, is how did we spend our money, making sure that it was done correctly as we intended. That's called a reconciliation. So when people say, well, I went and talked to the bookkeeper about the budget, that's not the budget. That's counting. That's not budgeting. That's management. Setting a budget, setting priorities is leadership. Because trust me, budgeting is not dividing the money equally among everybody. And you can't believe some of the, I was going to say, I guess it's not appropriate to say, so I won't say what I was going to say. Some of the dumbass requests you get, I won't say that, but you can't believe what teachers will ask you for, or parents will ask you for in your budget. I'm just astounded. I was over the years at some of the stuff that they ask us to spend our money on, rather than trying to educate kids. One of the schools in Charlotte Mecklenburg, when I was in charge of things, they wanted to suspend the school budget on paving the parking lot so the teachers wouldn't have as far to walk. They have a special place for them up closer to the building. I can't make that up. I wish I was dumb enough to do that. Smart enough to make that up. They wanted us, there was a patch of grass and they would pull up and park on it and it would get muddy. That wasn't part of the parking lot. They wanted us to take our school money to educate kids to pave the parking lot. So a place had plenty of parking, but it was closer to the building. If you sit and think about that for a minute, it just makes you mad. But I mean, I had all kinds of requests like that over the years. So not only does the school improvement team give you cover politically, and we do it as the stakeholders and as a group, it also protects you from things like that, where but you got to make those decisions. You know, it can't be that we're going to divide the money equally. I'd love to buy everybody in the band a new tuba, but you know, we got to work on these math scores. You have to, you know, budgeting is setting priorities and not dividing the money equally. That's not what budgeting is. And it's not just how did we spend it. Yeah, we're going to have to do it. Yeah. Larry said, you know, well, there's two things that you will learn in the school business. Unfortunately, Larry just pointed one of them out. The DECA club, when they travel, they'll get drunk and cause a disturbance wherever they go. If you're a high school principal and you got a DECA club, you can just depend on when the DECA club travels, they're going to do some dumbassery, some tomfoolery, and have the law on them. And you're gonna, every time they go. That's number one. Number two, if you've got a band boosters bunch, if you let them get anywhere near the money, they'll steal every penny of it. Every penny. Every time. If you let them around the money, it's just gone. It's just the way it goes. Larry's talking about had some parent in charge of the band booster club ran off with the money. We could literally read a story about that every day. The band is the worst. Those people are a cult. I love them. I wish I could play. I love band people. My best friend from teaching, by the way, that I still keep up with, he's a little younger than me. So I've known him for 40 years. Is that right? 40 years? Yeah, I've known him for, he's 7 years younger than me. So I've been in the business for 45. I've known him for 40 years. And he's a band director. And I love him like my brother. But he'll tell you, he started out in the woods like me. He made the big time. He made it to Scotland, Richland, those big bands in North Carolina with 200 members. He started out in the woods, far west like me. He made the big time. He was from Murphy, but yeah, he made the big time. But he'll tell you he had the band of renown, went to Indianapolis, the whole deal, big. But he'll tell you they'll steal pennies off a dead man's eyes. My best friend from college, or one of my two best friends from college, we were in one another's weddings. He's like me, you know, like my buddy, the band director, Andy would say, my ability, my musical ability, he evaluated my musical ability as being able to hear a door slam. That's about all the musical ability that I had. I had one of my two best friends from college, one another's wedding. His is the same as mine, but his children all turned out to be band kids. Two of them even went to Western Carolina to be in their band. You know what a big band they got at Western. And he will tell you, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, not a crazier bunch. And he was one of them. He was one of them that, you know, loaded all that stuff up and took all them trailers to be on the field for 5 minutes, you know, the crazy stuff that they do that's over the top. He was one of them, and he'll tell you, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But they'll take every penny and they'll spend money and leave you hanging with the bill. You got to monitor your band. You know, the only reason why the athletic people don't do that is because the sporting good companies are smart enough to know not to sell them stuff, or they'd be just as bad. And that's why I went to Bocock Stroud and I said, y'all know not to do this. Why in the world did you do this? And they said, well, you know, it's partly our fault. I said, no, it's all your fault. Well, we had a fellow, he doesn't work here anymore, but he was in danger of losing his job and he's trying to make his quota. Well, but you know better than that. You can't trust coaches or booster club people. Why in the world are you selling them stuff? Well, that's the thing you got to remember on working with these groups is you're responsible for what they do or don't do. And we've talked about that before. All right, a quick review of finance laws that has to do with you and the budget. Principal has to maintain a copy of the budget. It has to be available to parents and interested persons. You can't be that business that we don't give the budget out. Yes, you do. The law says you do. Right there it is. Please remember that the state works on a modified accrual accounting system. It says so right there in front of you, which means the money comes in monthly installments. You don't get it all up front from the federal government or the state government. It comes a month at a time. Your per pupil money comes a month at a time. Districts have to have money on hand to pay for the first month, and then you get your money reimbursed. If you spend it wrong, you're in trouble because they won't reimburse it. Right there, modified accrual basis of accounting. You know that your district has to do the same accounting, modified accrual, as the state. No money overnight, daily deposits. You have to do reconciliation. So if you have ball games, you have to do tickets so that you make sure that everything is done. Your books will be audited every year, every spring. Now, let's stop and talk about that one for a minute. I'm looking at our time. If you're in a large district, they'll do a reconciliation every month. If you're in which is not a bad thing. If you're in a small district, they'll only do the reconciliation one time a year at the spring audit. What is the reconciliation? That's where they take your budget, what they approved for you to spend money on, and they look at your account sheet to make sure that you spent your money on what you said you would spend it on. Now, in the larger districts, they do that every month. They do a reconciliation, but now that's a good thing. The problem in the small districts is since they only reconcile the 1 year at the annual audit, if you spent money on stuff that it wasn't approved or you weren't supposed to spend it on, it may be all year before you catch it, and you've been doing it all year long. That won't go well for you. What I liked about working in Charlotte is at the end of the month, if you knew something wasn't right, you had time to make up. But the biggest thing was you could quit it. You know, I told you when I went to the doctor, I said, Doc, when I do this, my shoulder hurts. He said, well, quit it. Don't do that. Well, that's the same way on the budget. You know, from month to month, if you're doing something that's not going to go well at audit time, you have time to quit it and make up for that. So you have to be extra careful out in the rural districts where your reconciliation and your audit only comes one time a year at the same time. And you won't know until all the money is gone that you spent it not as how it was approved. That's when you lose your job, because there's so much you can't pay it back, or you got no time to fix it. So it's a lot easier to lose your job in a small, you say, well, in small districts, they're not in your business every month. That's not a good thing. That is not a good thing, because you can run up quite a tab over a course of a year spending the money the wrong way. Now, you know, if you've misspent federal money, that there is no reprieve, but there's a reprieve on state and local money if you catch it early enough and correct it, but not at the end of the year. Not at the end of the year. I know that doesn't make sense, but that's just the way the world works. I hate that, but you know, the small districts can't afford to do a reconciliation every month. And so, boy, I'd be calling somebody. What was it Snoop said? You better ask somebody. You know, before I spend a penny that I wasn't completely sure of, I'd ask somebody, because especially in a small district where I'm not going to get a reconciliation until the end of the year, and I've already spent money wrong for 10 months, that won't be good. That won't be good at all. You won't survive that. Special funds, treasurer, deposits, repair of school property. You got to keep your building up. I think it was Larry made the point, you know, on your assessment inventory, it keeps your costs down if you keep your building up, in terms of teachers getting hurt, workman's comp, but also you're responsible for your buildings, because, you know, because remember, the local has to pay to keep those buildings up. You don't get state money to do that. So that's part of budgeting and accounting, is making sure that you keep your buildings in good order. And then, you know, that the local district has to pay for all your buildings maintenance and upkeep. And then this right here is most specific. This is how charter schools get their start. So when most charter schools start, they get the disused mobiles from the local school district, because they are public schools. And people say, well, why didn't they give them money like everybody else? Because the law says all the local has to do is give you classroom facilities. And so, like when Hopewell was built, and they moved half the population out of North Meck, they moved 80 trailers out. They had more students at North Meck in trailers than they did in the classroom at that time. They had 80 trailers. And they moved them out right up the street, right up Statesville Road, and that's how Lake Norman Charter School got started. Now they have a nicer facility than most schools in the county now, but they started in the disused mobiles from Trailer City, as they called it, at North Mecklenburg, because all the school district has to do for charter schools is give them classroom buildings. The Lake Lure Academy, Lake Lure Classical, the charter school here in Lake Lure, it got started the same way, with some old disused mobiles from Rutherford County Schools from the old Central. Right up on the side of the road, right there in view of the beach, Lake Lure, right next to the liquor store. That's how they got started, in a bunch of mobile units. They now have a very nice facility as well. And so, but that's what, remember, the capital, which is buildings and technology, their building and upkeep is responsibility of the county now, and all they have to give charter schools is classrooms. So that's why they give them these mobile units. Sometimes they give them old buildings, but they just have to give them mobile units. Your district will have the same laws as the state in terms of finance, budgeting, keeping money turned in, daily deposits, all that. They'll also have rules about fundraising. They'll have rules about reconciliation, pre-numbered tickets for ball games. They'll have rules about fundraising in your school, not having it during the school day, not letting people come in and sell, not running businesses out of the vocational or CTE departments. Don't be building buildings and competing with local maize manufacturer on yard buildings. They'll have all that stuff will be in the local. If you got people who moonlight jobs, have a second gig or something in the gig economy, Like real estate, or they can't be soliciting clients or taking calls while they're at work. All those things are here. And then my last story for the night is about Jerry Winklejohn. I met Jerry. I galloped Jerry. Remember, I was a Gallup receiver, the first level interview. Gallup is we used it in Charlotte to try to determine which assistant principals were ready to be principals. And so they would send them to me. And I would sit down and do the 60 questions with them. And Jerry Winklejohn was one of those. He was a young man. He was AP at Coolwood. And he had done his teaching and training in Florida, and he came to Charlotte. He was part of the wave where they were out recruiting. And Jerry was a real nice young man, kind of lanky, about 6 foot tall, thin. And I recommended him for a principal job based on his interview, and he went through the process. That was the first level, of course. They were using me to separate the wheat from the chaff, but the people that made decisions hired him. And he was principal at Ransom Middle School. Not understanding the laws, and especially those about use of buildings and community use of schools and all those things, he didn't realize that he didn't have the authority to tell people that they could or couldn't use his building. So he let a group come in. Sometimes you have church, but that's through community use, and it indemnifies the county and the school district, and they have to have their own insurance, and if they do any damage, they have to do a bond and all that business. Because facilities are they're the responsibility of this county schools, of the county commissioners and the school district. And so Jerry let this adult flag football league come in, and he watched them having such a good time, he decided to join them. No contract, no community use of schools, no insurance, no indemnification, no nothing. They're playing one Saturday morning. Jerry dives for a pass, breaks his neck, quadriplegic for life. Died a horrible death a few years later. Terrible, tragic story. Nice young man, young family, unbelievable. Here's the part: no community use of school contract, no indemnification, no insurance, no nothing, no workman's comp. He wasn't on the job. The only thing, state insurance, didn't want to pay either. Basically an illegal activity. Anybody know that North Carolina does not have long-term disability? It's only short-term. Long-term, you have to get it month by month. You have to go to the doctor. You realize it's capped at $2,500, regardless of what your salary is. It's capped at $25,000. For a principal at that time like him, that meant he took home about 40% of what he was normally taking home. No workman's comp. Medical bills out the wazoo. Tragic story. But the thing that we learned from that, and I really liked him, he was a nice young man. Budget and facilities and money are very, very punitive in terms of something goes wrong. The most punitive. You've heard the story, you money or you honey. The way you get fired in the school business is something with money, or you're having an inappropriate relationship with one of the faculty members or students. God forbid. Well, short of something criminal like that, where you have a criminal intent, a sickness, money, facilities, the two of them together, they are so specific about what you can and can't do, remembering that those facilities belong to the county. And they just basically let the school districts use them because they have to pay for them. And that the school board doesn't have taxing authority anyway, and doesn't really own anything. It becomes a political nightmare. It becomes a financial nightmare, keeping up your facilities, keeping up with your finances. It's the area that you can do the right thing every day and think you're doing the right thing, and really, if you're having an inappropriate relationship, it's wrong. But the sad part of the finance deal and the facilities deal is you don't know you're doing something wrong, and you end up losing your house and maybe even your freedom. That's the hard part of finance, and that's the reality of school finance. It is not for the meek. It is not for the faint of heart. If you sat and thought about it, it really it's really very punitive. The most punitive thing in our business is finances. There's just no wiggle room. You got to do everything right every time. Everything right every time. That's my conclusion on school finances. I hope you have a good understanding of where the money comes from, how it comes, the different streams, what you can do with it, what you can't do with it, those kinds of things. When you get some discretion at your end, I want you to think long and hard before you use discretionary money to hire temporary positions. It just rarely works out. Rarely. I am surprised that so many districts fell for that, the banana in the tailpipe on that deal. It never goes well. Never. But, I guess they thought that they could change that they could change history, but they ended up not, unfortunately. Your work is good. As I said, we've only got 3 that will finish the skip within the next day or 2, I'm quite sure. And everybody, by the time that we meet for our last class next week to talk about the other landmine now, the sexual stuff. That's why I always hold these to the end. These are the 2 that get you. This week on the finance, next week's on the sex. Between the 2 of them, even if you're not participating, it'll get you. And so that's why I saved them to last, the worst for last. If I put them first, I'd scare y'all off. You'd all quit before we got through the semester. But yes, these are the 2 worst ones. So we'll talk about them. And I hate that we have to talk about the sex one separately. It's become such a big issue. But sexual assault, sexual harassment, Title IX stuff is an everyday occurrence now in public schools, unfortunately. So that's what we'll talk about next week. Your work's great. I read every word of it. I look at your competency folios. I will do, put them in. I see I've got one in now. I looked at it before class, but I like to spend some time with them. I look at everyone. I love pictures, by the way. I'm like the little kids. I like my books to have mostly pictures. But when you're telling your story, those pictures tell so much about you. They really do. When you do, especially when you do the open-ended ones and you say, here's me in front of this group and I see a picture of you in front of the group. I mean, I saw a couple of RJ the other day and I thought, he looked pretty respectable, had a nice sweater and a shirt with a collar on it. And I thought he looked pretty good. He looked the part. He did. He looked the part. I mean, and you think about that, I get a sense of you because I've got to recommend you for a job and a license. But your prospective employers get a sense of you too when they see you in those pictures with those open-ended. I love those pictures. They tell so much a so much more vivid story about you. That. So I can't encourage you enough to, if you're doing something, hand somebody your cell phone, have them snap a picture of you doing it. I love that. You got your phone with you. I made the mistake and left mine in my condo a few weekends back, and I went all weekend without my phone. I loved it. Everybody that I knew was mad at me. Why didn't you return my call? I texted you. I honestly had to get on this new computer that I'm on tonight and do it where I could send and receive calls and text on my computer. After about 4 hours without my phone, everybody revolted on me. So I know you got your phone with you, or your friends would abandon you. So just hand your phone to somebody and have them take your picture. You see me referring to mine. I live my life through y'all. Y'all keep me grounded with what's going on in school, and I love to see your pictures. I love to read your stuff. It tells a story, and you say, well, Dale, why do we care if you know the story or not? If you can tell me the story, you can tell a prospective employer your story as well. You got in this program to get a job, period, and that's part of it. Yes, I want you to learn and know stuff, but we've got to look the part and convince somebody that we're not going to be Barney. And as soon as Andy goes to Raleigh, we hire, we deputize Otis to town drunk and give Gomer a gun. We've got to convince people that we are the part, not that we just look the part, that we are the part. And that portfolio, that competency folio with those pictures helps you tell your story of who you are and show who you are. Those evidences, they tell us who you are. So it's good stuff. Pictures are good. All right. Anybody have anything for the good of the group before we go? Tanya's got one.
I'm looking at the moving to the 605 textbooks. The only reason I'm asking, the 3 textbooks that are listed, are those books you would recommend that we purchase for ourselves? And also for you friends out there, you can get all 3 of these for $109 on Amazon and not do the $192 Bulldog bundle unless we're going to turn them back in. I'm just asking. And the Nordhaus is a 9th edition on Amazon and it's listed as 8th. Does it matter if it's 8th or 9th?
I get the 9.
Okay.
I mean, the Northhouse book, the Strength Finder book, what you got? Strength Finder, Northhouse, and what's the other one?
Basic Guide to Supervision,
Glickman.
Instructional Glickman.
You got a Glickman book.
2 of them are for $20 and one's for $68 on Amazon.
What, the Northhouse book, $68?
The Glickman is $68.
Glickman, I was going to say, Glickman 68. You need the Glickman book. You'll keep that one.
Okay. And the Northhouse, you've got to get a knockoff because the new ones are gone.
Nah.
And the strength-based
Strength Finder,
wrap
yeah,
is $20.
The reason why you need a new, I've got a shelf full of them, but the perfume samples are torn out of them. They've got a little packet inside of them, like a perfume sample, like comes in a magazine. When you tear it out, open it up, it's got a code where you can take the part of the fee you pay for the book is to take the assessment, the inventory assessment on that. I've got a shelf full of those books, but all of the codes are out of them. But I would say buy them, because if you turn them back, you're not going to get that much, and you need to keep that Glickman book.
Okay.
And
the most of us probably got the email from the
Bulldog
student,
bundle.
Yeah, about that today. That's going to start on the 22nd.
Yep. Well, yeah, that's what I talked about in the town hall the other night. If you go online and go to Amazon, make sure you opt out of the Bulldog bundle. You'll save about $80 buying them off Amazon, and you can keep them. I don't know if you turn them back. I don't think they'll give you that much for them. So I would recommend buying them off Amazon. And that way you're sure that you buy a new Strength Finder so they hadn't already used the code in it. Don't buy a used Strength Finder. You won't get the perfume packet with the code.
So you need a code for the Northhouse.
No, for Strength.
Oh, the Strength base. Sorry, my bad.
You need the
code. The Tom Rath. Okay.
Yes, Tom Rath. Rath and Conchi, you got to have a code.
Okay.
And as I said, all of mine had the codes torn out of them. I got a shelf full of them that I've collected over the years. But once a code is used, it's no longer valid. And you want to do the assessment. You get a personal assessment out of it. And that's one of your assignments. So make sure you don't get a used one. Yeah, Glickman. Every educational program at Gardner Webb and most everywhere have a Glickman book in most all the curricula, or all of them. We've got one in every one at Gardner Webb. Every one of our curricula in the graduate has a Glickman book of some sort on supervision. that kind of goes back to that notion that I was telling you a few minutes ago, where I was making one of my rants tonight. Our instructional leadership is different than the C&I people, and different from some of the other groups, because we do supervision of instruction. And that's what they're going to teach you next semester. I kind of let the cat out of the bag tonight, but that's the whole notion. We don't do instructional leadership like facilitators do or lead teachers do. And that's why I couldn't believe it when the lady from Central this afternoon was talking about, well, we teach PLCs in our teacher leadership course. That's that's not the same as what we do. Administrators have a different interaction with PLCs than teacher leaders or curriculum facilitators do. And the same thing with classroom instruction. We don't go in and sit down and script lessons and work with you on, on every little fine point of teaching. That's not what we do. That's what Glickman teaches you. We don't get down in the weeds. We can't. That's not our job. Our version of supervision and instruction is different. Y'all are going to learn all about that next semester. I kind of, either let the cat out of the bag or set you up for next semester to understand that you'll have a Glickman supervision of instruction. We do supervision of instruction. That is our form of instructional leadership.
Where do we find out what books we will be needing?
It's at the bottom of our list, at the very, very bottom
I
under
got
the
605 materials. Thank you. Let me share my screen. So I went ahead. Should be right here under, right there, under 605 materials. And they're by the latest versions of these. Let me look right quick. Using that. I'll fix that problem later. Yeah. Glickman Basic Guide to Supervision and North House. And then the Rath and Conchi, whatever the latest versions of those are.
Sorry, and Caroline, for us, like it's on the left-hand side, but you just have to scroll down to under the last like Zoom sessions.
Again, right down here. Is that what you're talking about, Danya? Right here, under task stream competency folio. Here's 605 materials.
Yes, sir.
There
Yeah,
you
ours is
go.
all. Thank
Just
you.
yeah, thank you. Just make sure you buy the latest version on Amazon. Whatever their latest one is, will be fine. Now, some folks don't like using the strength finder. The value in the strength finder for me is self-assessment, to give you kind of a roadmap of where you are and where you need to go to. Kind of points out your strengths and weaknesses. I like that. It helps put your self-reflection into context. It's a good thing to reflect if you have some parameters and some context. Otherwise, it's just worrying. You just sit and, you have more questions than answers. Reflection is supposed to help you to, to ease your mind and inform your practice and make some decisions, not to make you more indecisive. And one of the things I like about the Strength Finder is it's a good assessment of where you are and what your strengths are and what you need to work on.
So there are actually 4 things that we need to purchase. That's the 4th thing.
No, Rath and Conchi,
Oh, it comes
Lickman,
with that. Okay.
and North House. That's it.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
No, the Rath and Conchi book, Strength Finder 2.0, tells you all about these things. And then once you learn about them, it lets you take an assessment to see where you are. Once you've learned all about them, it's about developing your personal leadership. It's about you as a leader. In one of the doctoral programs, we have students do it, and they have to write a significant paper on it titled "Me as a Leader," and it's kind of the heart of it. And they have to do some research around it. We won't make y'all do that, but you know, have you ever been anywhere, say Walmart, and when you saw the way somebody was dressed, you said, I know they can't have a mirror in their house. Nobody that was at least a little bit self-aware would have left the house looking like that. Well, it's the same kind of thing with your leadership skill. If you had the least little bit of self-awareness, we wouldn't do some of the things we do as leaders. And that's the whole idea of Strength Finder, is to increase your self-awareness of what you're good at and what you aren't, so that you'll stop doing the things that you aren't really good at and work on. And so, 605 is a time to work on your personal leadership skill, the identification and reflection. What have I got to work on? What have I got to be better at? And that's what the Rath and Conchi book helps you do. North House is leadership theory, what you should be doing. Rath and Conchi is an inventory of who you are, your personality type, your dispositional behaviors, how you should shape those to be a better leader. Helps you reflect on your practice.
And it's the Rath and Conchi that has
Strength Finder.
that assessment that we have to do.
Don't buy a used one. Don't buy Strength Finder 2.0 by Rath and Conchi. Make sure you buy a new one so that you can take the assessment. If you just buy the assessment, it costs as much as the book. Basically, you're paying $20 for the assessment and get a free book. If you can go online and you can get a used book and then go online and pay to take the assessment. If you get a used book with the code, but the code costs as much as the book. And so I've had students give high price for the book and had to pay full price. And so they ended up paying $30 for a $20 book and assessment. They paid $30. They're never mad at me. Just pay the $20. You get the book and the assessment.
So don't get it through Kindle or Audible.
No. I don't know how they do. I've got an Audible account. Now I wear the wheels off of Audible. I do. I am one of their best customers. Now, for years, I did books on tape, and I did every book on tape in the entire library system in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. I was their best customer. Now I do books on tape. I've got a separate tablet that I do it on, and a separate speaker so that it don't mess up my Bluetooth, so I can talk on my phone all the time and listen to my books at the same time. So I can triple task, drive, listen to a book, and talk on the phone and rant and rave. I love Audible. I don't know if you do Audible, how you, maybe they would send you a link to a code. You can check that out if you're a book. My point is, if I know how that is, you get addicted to Audible. You have to be careful about that because a lot of materials don't come in that form. But yes, Audible is addictive. I've been a books on tape fan since back in the cassette era, and then they went to CDs, and now I've got it, through my tablet. But yeah, I get it. Once you get that bug, it's hard to get away from it. But I'm not sure of how you would get your code. I don't know that. But you can try. You can try to find out. You might can get it through your account. All right. Other questions? Again, next week we'll wrap up with the sexual stuff, sexual assault, sexual harassment, Title IX. We've gone through it, but I want to hit the highlights at the end of it again, unfortunately. Anything else for the good of the group at that time? Everybody should be through with both required evidences this semester. And y'all are well on your way to the cap. We've already had our town hall. Is anybody else, anything y'all can think of? Any of y'all thinking about coming back to the doctoral program in the fall? Either one of those? I don't know. Here's the bad news for y'all. If you do, I'll be in charge of that this fall. I'm shifting to EDLS coordinator. You know, I did MSA and the doctoral and organization this year. And so I told them I couldn't do across masters and doctoral because I never get to go home. Masters is all week. You know, doctoral's weekend. And so I'm going to teach 603 again this summer. And then I'm going to shift to the doctoral program. So bad news is if y'all come to EDLS, you'll be with me in the fall. I won't teach 730 though. I teach 738, which is the law policy for them, and 736, which is research statistics. Those are my two at the doctoral level. I teach law policy, finance, same things here, and statistics, same thing I do now. So I would have y'all either in 736 or 738. So it goes 730, 732, 734, 736, 738, probably the fifth semester before y'all got back to me. So y'all would have time to hope that I retired by then. But it's 2 years of full-time coursework and then dissertation. You know, our goal is to try to have you out in a year on the dissertation. It's a lot of money, but once you're in school mode, coursework's fairly easy other than the research semester because the evidence is, you know what they are. They're the same, same six y'all do now except the central office. Pretty easy to knock them out. Y'all know how to do them. They don't take near as much time to doctoral level. But, doctoral level, you always working on that dissertation, even from the very beginning. You have a coach. We give you a coach just like you have now. Except for this semester, I've coached y'all too, but it's a good program. I've recruited for it for years. I teach in and out of it, but be thinking about it. You should be getting something, from the college. We're starting the recruiting. We had the meeting earlier today, so we're going to start the recruiting. So if you're interested in it, call me. There's 3 different ones. You need to find the one that fits you. And if you want to take a break, that's perfectly logical too. Just don't break for too long. Once you get out of the school mode, it's hard to get back in on the writing part. You know how you struggled last semester with the writing. So you got back in the mode again. And everybody does. It's like that, except worse if you stay out long on that writing for that dissertation. You know how hard it is to get back in. All right. I'm done. I appreciate you. I'll see y'all next week. Everybody have a good week.